All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Good, because today we're going to be looking into some real-life nightmares, the kind that happen when most people are, tucked safely in bed.
Ooh, okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah, so we've got 3 stories from the Mr. Nightmare YouTube channel, all about working the night shift. Those quiet, isolated hours where every little creak or shadow seems like it could be a threat.
Oh yeah, night shifts. You're definitely more vulnerable then.
Exactly. And it's not just about being physically alone, it's also about your senses being heightened, making you more aware of every little thing, which can play tricks on your mind.
Right, darkness hides a lot of information, so your other senses have to work harder to compensate, and that can lead to a lot of anxiety and fear. It's a fascinating mix of biology and psychology.
So true, it's like our primal instincts kicking in, telling us to be on high alert. And that makes these stories even more unsettling, right?
Definitely.
So let's jump into the first one. This one takes place in a deserted hotel in a town that's recovering from a hurricane. Our narrator is working the front desk, alone, when a man appears needing towels. Seems innocent enough, but the narrator picks up on some unsettling vibes right away.
You know, it's those small details, those gut feelings, that are often so important. The narrator mentions the man grabbing the towels aggressively, almost too forcefully, and giving her a strange look, even rubbing them all over his face.
Yeah, it's like his actions betray his words. There's this disconnect between what he's saying and how he's behaving.
Exactly. It's like his actions are a subconscious leakage of his true intentions.
Right, and it gets even creepier. He comes back claiming his keycard is broken and gives a room number that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that instantly set off alarm bells for you?
Oh, absolutely. It's a clear indication that something's not right. He's either intentionally trying to deceive her or experiencing some kind of mental distress. Either way, it's a situation that calls for caution.
Yeah, no doubt. But things take a truly dark turn when he leans in with a chilling smile and says, "I'm gonna kill you."
What do you make of that smile, though? It seems so incongruous with the death threat.
The smile is actually one of the most disturbing aspects. It suggests a kind of sadistic pleasure in instilling fear, a lack of empathy that's incredibly unsettling.
Yeah, it's like he's getting off on her fear.
Right, it's a classic manipulation tactic designed to make the victim doubt their own perception of the threat.
Is he serious? Is he joking? That uncertainty just adds another layer of terror.
It's a mind game, really. Thankfully, our narrator manages to call the police while keeping him distracted. But the story doesn't end there. She has to walk home, alone in the dark, and guess who she encounters along the way?
I think we all see where this is going.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
The fact that he follows her home really speaks volumes about his intent. It's no longer just a random threat confined to the hotel, it's become a targeted pursuit.
Right. And he whispers those same chilling words, "I'm gonna kill you." It's like something out of a nightmare. She just escaped this threat, and now it's back, even more terrifying than before. What must be going through her mind at that point?
The feeling of being hunted, of being stalked, can be utterly paralyzing. Your fight or flight response kicks in, but it's coupled with a sense of helplessness, especially in the dark. It's a primal fear, really.
And she's incredibly lucky to escape. She spots a house with lights on, runs towards it, screaming for help. He grabs her, but thankfully someone inside hears her and scares him off. But imagine the trauma of that experience, the feeling of being so close to danger.
Absolutely. And what makes this case even more disturbing is that he's never caught. Imagine the lingering fear, the constant looking over your shoulder, never knowing if he might be out there watching.
Oh gosh, it's the kind of experience that would change you, make you question the safety of everyday life.
Those what-ifs are a natural part of processing trauma, but it's important to remember that the responsibility lies with the perpetrator, not the victim.
Absolutely. However, there are certainly things we can learn from this story, ways to be more aware and prepared.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's easy to dismiss these stories as isolated incidents, but I think they highlight a vulnerability that many people, especially those working night shifts, face on a regular basis. It's a reminder that even in seemingly safe environments, danger can lurk in the shadows.
That's an excellent point. We often associate certain places with safety, but the reality is threat can emerge anywhere, at any time. And that's why being aware of your surroundings, trusting your gut instincts, and having a plan in place are so crucial.
You know what? You're so right. Okay, so we've unpacked this first harrowing tale. Now, this next story also highlights the importance of trusting your gut, but it takes place in a completely different setting, a home improvement store.
Let's see what kind of nightmares can unfold amongst those aisles of power tools and paint samples.
So it's a closing shift. And our narrator is working with her friend Nicole, who, as they say, is quite pretty and often gets unwanted attention from male customers. I'm sure many women, unfortunately, can relate to that experience.
It's a sad reality that many women face, particularly in customer-facing roles. It speaks to a broader societal issue of disrespect for boundaries and a sense of entitlement that some men feel towards women.
Yeah, and it's a really uncomfortable power dynamic.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what sets the stage for this encounter. A man becomes fixated on Nicole, flirting with her and asking her out even after she politely declines.
The persistence, the refusal to take no for an answer, is the first red flag. It's a clear sign that he's not respecting her boundaries, and that's when things can start to escalate.
And this is where the narrator jumps in with a quick-witted, maybe slightly humorous lie. She tells the man that Nicole is her fiancée.
Oh, wow.
It's a classic deflection tactic.
It's a clever move, creating a sense of solidarity and hopefully deterring him. But as we'll see, it doesn't quite work out that way. These kinds of fixations can be incredibly difficult to shake off.
You're telling me. Weeks pass, and they think they've dodged a bullet. But then one night, as they're closing up, they hear a loud bang on the door. It's him, back with a vengeance. But this time, his target isn't Nicole. It's the narrator.
Oh, wow.
It's like he's decided to eliminate the competition. He's banging on the doors, threatening to take her out. She's trapped in this little cashier area, totally vulnerable. What's going through her head at this point?
It's a moment of pure terror. You're facing a potential attacker, you're confined, and there's no immediate escape. The feeling of helplessness can be overwhelming. It's a situation that highlights the importance of having a safety plan in place, even in a seemingly safe environment like a store.
Absolutely. In this case, thankfully, Nicole grabs a 2x4 talk about resourcefulness. And the police arrive shortly after, scaring him off. He's eventually caught and arrested, but can you imagine the fear they must have felt in that moment?
The adrenaline, the sheer terror, it must have been incredibly intense. It's a reminder that these situations can unfold so quickly. And having a plan, even a rudimentary one, can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's for sure. So what can we learn from this encounter? What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, this story reinforces the importance of taking any threat, even a seemingly minor one, seriously. Don't downplay your gut instincts, especially when it comes to personal safety. If someone makes you feel uncomfortable, if their behavior crosses a line, trust your intuition and take steps to protect yourself.
That's such a crucial point. So often we're conditioned to be polite, to not make a fuss. But when it comes to safety, speaking up, setting boundaries, and being assertive can be life-saving.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that you're not alone. If you feel threatened, don't hesitate to call for help, whether it's a coworker, security personnel, or the police. There are resources available, people who can support you and ensure your safety.
That's a good point. And speaking of being alone, let's move on to our final story tonight, which takes us to a quiet motel where our narrator is, once again, working the solo night shift. It seems like working alone at night is a recurring theme in these unsettling tales.
It certainly is. And that isolation, that lack of immediate support, makes these situations all the more terrifying. Let's see what awaits our narrator at this seemingly peaceful motel.
Right from the start, there's a sense of unease. The first guest she checks in is acting strangely, swatting at the air and making these odd spitting noises, like he's seeing things that aren't there.
Right.
You know, that kind of behavior that instantly sends chills down your spine.
It's that subtle creepiness, those inexplicable actions that can be so unnerving. Our brains are wired to detect patterns and make sense of the world around us. When someone behaves outside those norms, it triggers a sense of alarm, a feeling that something is amiss.
Yeah, it's like a primal warning system, telling us to pay attention, to be on guard. And our narrator is already on edge, alone, unable to reach her friend for guidance. It's that feeling of isolation, of being trapped in a potentially dangerous situation with no one to turn to, that really amplifies the fear.
That sense of isolation is a powerful tool in horror movies, and unfortunately, it can be just as potent in real life. It heightens our vulnerability, making us question our own perceptions and second-guess our instincts.
Right, exactly. And that dread just keeps building as the man returns to the office, unable to get into his room. But there's something in his eyes, a strange intensity, that makes the narrator's blood run cold.
It's that gut feeling again, that visceral sense that something is deeply wrong. And often those instincts are spot on. Our subconscious minds are incredibly adept at picking up on subtle cues that our conscious minds might miss.
It's like our bodies are trying to tell us something, screaming at us to pay attention. And tragically, Her instincts are right. When she steps away to call for help, the man overhears her and starts muttering threats to kill her. It's like a nightmare come to life.
It's a horrifying realization. The very act of seeking help has now made her a target. It creates a sense of utter helplessness, of being trapped between a rock and a hard place.
It's a lose-lose situation. Does she stay in the office and risk him breaking in, or try to de-escalate the situation and hope for the best? What would you do in that moment?
There's no easy answer, no perfect solution in a situation like that. It's about assessing the immediate threat, trusting your intuition, and making the best possible decision with the information you have at hand. Sometimes that means taking a calculated risk, even if it feels terrifying.
Yeah. So, despite her terror, she decides to escort the man to his room, hoping to calm him down and avoid further confrontation. It's an incredibly brave but also desperate decision.
It speaks to her resilience, her willingness to take action, even in the face of fear. It's a survival instinct kicking in, a primal urge to do whatever it takes to get out of that situation alive.
Yeah, you're right. But here's where things take an even darker turn. As they're walking down the hallway, she realizes he was trying to get into the wrong room. He was trying to get into a room where a woman was staying alone. It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
It's a chilling reminder that the threat often extends beyond the person working the night shift. It can encompass anyone who happens to be in that vulnerable space at that particular time. It speaks to the randomness, the unpredictability of these situations, which can be incredibly unsettling.
And in this case, it's a woman alone, which makes it even more terrifying. You can't help but think about all the what-ifs. Thankfully, the next guest to check in turns out to be a police officer, offering a much-needed sense of security and relief.
It's a stroke of luck, a reminder that sometimes, even in the darkest of situations, there's a glimmer of hope. But it also underscores the importance of situational awareness, of being vigilant and prepared for the unexpected.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into night shift nightmares, I'm curious, what are some of the common threads you're seeing across these stories? What are the key insights that our listeners should take away from these experiences?
Well, one of the most striking elements is the vulnerability that comes with working alone at night. These individuals are often isolated, with limited access to help, making them prime targets for those with ill intentions.
It's like the darkness itself becomes a breeding ground for fear and uncertainty, amplifying everything.
Precisely. And then there's the crucial role of intuition, that gut feeling that something isn't right. In each story, there were warning signs, subtle cues that something was off.
Like you mentioned before, that aggressive grab of the towels, the strange spitting noises, the man's intense stare in the motel. Individually, they might seem insignificant, but together, they paint a pretty disturbing picture. It makes you wonder, how often do we ignore those gut feelings in our daily lives?
That's a great question. We're often conditioned to suppress our intuition, to second-guess ourselves. But when it comes to safety, those instincts can be life-saving. It's about learning to trust that inner voice, that sense of unease that tells us something isn't right.
It's like our internal alarm system, and we need to pay attention when it goes off. And another theme that really struck me was the psychological toll these experiences take, even after the immediate danger has passed.
Absolutely. The trauma, the fear, the hypervigilance, these can linger for years. It's like a shadow that follows you, a constant reminder of your vulnerability.
It makes you question the safety of everyday life, makes you wonder if it could happen again. It's a heavy burden to carry.
It certainly is, and it highlights the importance of seeking support, whether it's from friends, family, or mental health professionals. Processing these experiences, talking about them, developing coping mechanisms, these are all crucial steps in healing and regaining a sense of safety and control.
So true. So shifting gears a bit, you've mentioned the importance of having a safety plan in place. What are some practical steps our listeners can take to feel safer, especially if they work night shifts or find themselves alone in potentially vulnerable situations?
Well, firstly, awareness is key. Pay attention to your surroundings, be observant of people's behavior, and trust your gut instincts if something feels off.
Don't just dismiss those feelings as paranoia, right?
Exactly. Our instincts are there for a reason. And practically speaking, share your schedule with someone you trust. Let them know where you'll be and when you're expected back. If possible, vary your routines. It's about making yourself less predictable, less of an easy target.
Those are all great tips. And what about self-defense? Is that something you recommend?
It's certainly worth considering. Taking a self-defense class can not only teach you physical techniques, but also boost your confidence and awareness. But remember, self-defense should always be a last resort. The primary goal is to avoid dangerous situations altogether.
Prevention is key, right?
Absolutely. But if confrontation is unavoidable, having some self-defense skills can give you a fighting chance. And don't underestimate simple tools like a personal alarm or pepper spray. They can be effective deterrents and buy you precious time to escape.
And of course, we can't forget about technology. Location sharing apps, emergency contact features on our phones, these can be lifesavers.
Technology can definitely be a powerful ally in personal safety.
Okay, so we've covered practical tips, but what about the emotional and psychological impact we talked about earlier? How can people cope with the fear and anxiety that can linger long after a traumatic experience?
That's such an important aspect that often gets overlooked. First and foremost, don't hesitate to seek professional help. Talking to a therapist or counselor can be incredibly beneficial in processing trauma and developing healthy coping mechanisms. You don't have to go through this alone.
It's a sign of strength to reach out for support, not a weakness.
I couldn't agree more. And don't underestimate the power of self-care. Engaging in activities that bring you joy and peace. Spending time in nature, practicing mindfulness, connecting with loved ones, these can all contribute to healing and restoring a sense of well-being.
Building a strong support system is vital too. Surrounding yourself with people who understand, who listen without judgment, and who can offer encouragement and strength that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Sharing your experience with trusted individuals can help you process your emotions and feel less isolated. And remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself and celebrate every step forward.
Those are powerful words. So you've shared some incredible insights about personal safety and the psychological effects of these experiences. But I'm wondering, what sparked your interest in this field? What drew you to this work?
You know, I've always been fascinated by human behavior, by the interplay of our minds and actions. And early in my career, I worked with a number of individuals who had experienced trauma, who had been victims of violence. Hearing their stories, witnessing their resilience, it ignited a passion in me to understand these issues more deeply, to find ways to help people feel safer and more empowered.
It's about giving people the tools and knowledge to navigate these challenges, to reclaim their sense of agency.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from fear and helplessness to awareness and action.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about those subtle cues, those red flags that often signal danger. Can you give us some specific examples? What should our listeners be on the lookout for?
Well, it's important to remember that context is key. What might be considered normal behavior in one situation could be a red flag in another. But generally speaking, pay attention to anyone who invades your personal space, makes you feel uncomfortable, or disrespects your boundaries. Trust your gut if something feels off, even if you can't quite articulate why.
So it's not just about overt threats or aggressive behavior, but also those subtle, almost imperceptible cues that something isn't right.
Precisely. It's about paying attention to the whole picture. The verbal and nonverbal communication, the energy, the overall vibe. Our bodies are incredibly sensitive instruments, and they often pick up on things that our conscious minds miss.
It's about tuning in to that internal radar, trusting our intuition. And I think that's a powerful message for our listeners. So often, we're told to ignore those gut feelings, to brush them off as paranoia. But when it comes to safety, those instincts can be life-saving.
Absolutely. It's about reclaiming that power, that inner wisdom that tells us when something isn't right.
And speaking of power, I think one of the most disempowering aspects of these stories is the feeling of helplessness, the sense that you have no control over the situation. But you've emphasized throughout this conversation that there are things we can do, steps we can take to feel safer and more empowered. Can you elaborate on that? What's the key takeaway for our listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed or anxious after hearing these stories?
You know, it's understandable to feel overwhelmed or anxious after hearing about these experiences. These stories tap into our deepest fears, our sense of vulnerability in a world that can sometimes feel unpredictable and dangerous. But the key takeaway, the message I want to emphasize, is that we are not powerless. We have more agency than we often realize.
It's about shifting that mindset from fear to empowerment, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that while we can't control every situation, we can control how we prepare for them, how we respond to them, and how we take care of ourselves in the aftermath.
So it's a multifaceted approach encompassing physical safety, measures emotional resilience, and a strong support system.
Precisely. It's about being proactive, about taking ownership of our safety and well-being.
And I think that's an incredibly empowering message. It's about moving beyond the fear and reclaiming our sense of agency. It's about recognizing that we are not just passive victims, but active participants in our own safety and well-being.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's about recognizing our own strength, our own resilience, and our ability to navigate these challenges and emerge stronger on the other side.
So as we approach the end of our deep dives into these night shift nightmares, I'm wondering if you could leave our listeners with one final thought, something to ponder as they go about their daily lives.
You know, as we've delved into these stories, we've explored the darkness, the vulnerability, the fear. But I think it's equally important to remember the light, the resilience, the strength that exists within each of us. We have the power to face our fears, to protect ourselves, and to support one another. We have the power to create a world where these nightmares become less frequent, less terrifying, and ultimately less impactful on our lives.
That's a beautiful and inspiring thought. It's a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there's always hope, always a flicker of light that can guide us towards safety and well-being.
And that light often shines brightest when we come together, when we support one another, and when we refuse to let fear dictate our lives.
That's a powerful message to end on. So to our listeners, we hope this exploration into the world of night shift nightmares has been both insightful and thought-provoking. Remember, you are not alone. You have the power to take control of your safety, to build resilience, and to create a world where these nightmares hold less power over our lives.
Stay vigilant, trust your gut, and never underestimate the strength that lies within you.
And on that note, we've reached the end of another deep dive. We hope you found this exploration into the world of night shift nightmares both insightful and empowering. Remember to stay vigilant, trust your gut, and take care of yourselves out there. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds curious. You know, it's easy to get caught up in those what-ifs after hearing stories like these. But I appreciate how you've focused on practical steps we can all take to feel safer and more empowered. What else comes to mind?
Well, building on what we've already discussed, I think it's important to remember that safety is an ongoing process, not a destination. It's about constantly evaluating your surroundings, assessing risks, and adapting your behaviors accordingly.
So it's not just about having a one-size-fits-all safety plan, but rather a flexible mindset that can adapt to different situations.
Exactly. It's about being present, aware, and responsive to the ever-changing dynamics of our environment. And it's about trusting our instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore that feeling. It's better to err on the side of caution and take steps to protect yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Precisely. It's about taking ownership of our safety rather than simply hoping for the best. And it's about empowering ourselves with knowledge and skills that can help us navigate these challenges effectively.
Now, we've talked a lot about personal safety measures, but I'm wondering if there's anything our listeners can do on a broader level to create safer communities, especially for those who work night shifts or are more vulnerable to these types of situations.
That's a great question. It's important to remember that safety is a collective responsibility. We can all contribute to creating safer environments by being vigilant, by looking out for one another, and by speaking up when we see something that seems amiss.
So it's about fostering a sense of community, of shared responsibility for each other's well-being.
Absolutely. And it's about advocating for policies and practices that prioritize safety, particularly in workplaces and public spaces. This could include things like improved lighting, increased security patrols, and better training for employees on how to handle potentially dangerous situations.
Those are all great points. It's about creating a culture of safety that permeates all aspects of our lives. Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the emotional and psychological impact of these experiences. We touched on this earlier, but can you offer any final thoughts on how to cope with the lingering fear and anxiety that can often follow a traumatic event?
You know, it's essential to remember that these feelings are normal. It takes time to process trauma and to heal. Be patient with yourself and allow yourself to feel those emotions without judgment.
So it's about acknowledging those feelings rather than suppressing them.
Exactly. Suppressing emotions only prolongs the healing process. And don't hesitate to seek professional help. A therapist or counselor can provide valuable support and guidance as you navigate this challenging time.
It's a sign of strength to reach out for help, not a weakness.
I couldn't agree more. And remember that healing is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, good days and bad days. Be kind to yourself, celebrate your progress, and know that you are not alone.
Those are powerful words of encouragement, and I think they beautifully encapsulate the essence of this deep dive. It's not just about understanding the dangers, but also about empowering ourselves with the knowledge, skills, and support to navigate these challenges and emerge stronger on the other side.
Well said. It's about reclaiming our sense of agency, our belief in our own resilience, and our ability to create a safer and more empowering world for ourselves and for others.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our journey into the world of night shift nightmares. We hope you found this exploration both insightful and empowering.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about these dangers, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and those around us.
And remember, you are not alone. There are resources available, people who care, and a community that supports you. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and take care of yourselves out there. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds curious.